So this year, 2017, is the 100th anniversary of the Russian Revolution, which eventually created the Soviet Union. The Soviet Union's existence can still be felt in the world today, and it shaped the world irreversibly. This anthem itself is just so impressive and timeless that you would think the evil empire was timeless in and of itself. And I guess its influence, in many ways, really is. I was reading an article today from the New York Times, and the piece highlighted the fact that the Russian government is not celebrating the anniversary of the revolution which dethroned the czars. And with the dissolution of the old USSR, I'm really not surprised, and I was wondering why the New York Times thought that they would celebrate that. In certainly different circumstances, would you expect the United States of America to celebrate the birth of the Confederacy? And yes, the Russian Revolution freed the Russian people from the czars, but its version of communism certainly wasn't a movement that benefited the average person. Now Russia is supposedly a democratic country, and there are people who are skeptical of how democratic Russia is, but if they are pushing and claiming to be a democratic country, they're certainly not going to take the time to celebrate a revolution that brought on the birth of communism, which can still, as I said, be felt throughout the world. Listen to this anthem, though. It's a great national anthem. Really a great anthem. You cannot deny that. Welcome to the River's Edge Radio Network. I am Brian Crawford. I am Pittsburgh's moral compass, your voice of reason among three rivers of chaos. You can listen to us live via Facebook, riversedgepgh.com, and riversedgepgh.com/live for the live video. If you're not a Facebook a person who uses Facebook. If you want to reach the show, you could do so at RiverTalkPGH, my Twitter account, or the Facebook Live feed. We also have a chat going there, and the River's Edge website is powered by NJL WebTech. Honest, practical, and affordable. Go to njlwebtech.com for all of your web building needs. And just for the record, I'm not a fan of the communist system. I never have been. And I know that's not fashionable today. Everybody loves to make everything equal, and not that I'm against equality. And it has nothing to do with the human condition bastardizing the values that communism really originally stood for, in the fact that it has always, at some point, turned into some sort of a dictatorship. I just believe, in my heart of hearts, that if you work hard, you should have more. And I know that's taboo in today's world, and nobody likes the thought or the concept that people who work hard and work more get more. And I know that in our system, sometimes you could be lucky and get more. Sometimes you can just inherit more. And I know that that's not fair. But in the system we live in, if you work really, really hard, you can earn more. So I'm somebody, Brian Crawford, your illustrious host, who sometimes goes days without sleep. I'm taking years off of my life, living a lifestyle that is unnatural, that is unhealthy, to get this station, the River's Edge, Pittsburgh's local music radio station, off the ground. When I describe a day in the life of Brian Crawford, people look at me like I'm a madman, like I'm a Mad Hatter. Which, do you know where that term came from? It actually has to do with mercury that they would use in creating top hats, and the person who made the hats would go crazy because of handling the element. Just a little aside. But people look at me like I'm a madman, and I probably am. I feel like most talk show hosts, if they're worth anything, have a little bit of madness, a little bit of crazy, and that's what makes them interesting. Would you really want to sit here for an hour 3 times a week and listen to somebody who's bland, listen to somebody who's interesting, listen to somebody who has no opinion or is very vanilla? No, people want chocolate. They want spice. There's a reason why people like hot and spicy foods. There's a reason why people want to live on the edge. They enjoy a little bit of crazy. And that's who I am. And that being said, the life I live, the craziness that is Brian Crawford and the concept of the River's Edge Radio Network, if my business takes off, why should I not bear the fruits of my labor? Why should I not have something to show for my success? And yes, there is the intrinsic value of creating a network. But if the business takes off, I think the time that I've put in, the days without sleep, the unending meetings and work and behind-the-scenes things that you do not see me doing, I think there should be some sort of reward for that. Why should some bum with no inspiration, somebody who does nothing but punches in and out, and then goes home and plays video games, and I have no problem with weed smokers, because a lot of my friends are weed smokers, and they're very productive people, but why should the person who just sits at home and lounges around and drinks and smokes weed and does nothing else outside of that, why should they merit the same rewards that I would merit by putting in all of this work for the network, if it succeeds? Now, who knows? Maybe this concept won't succeed. I think it has a very good chance. But the same could be said for any local artist or the person who's working 3 jobs to get things done. But I think there's something to be said for an innovator who's able to make his way in the world and change the world. So I've never been a fan of the communist system. But that being said, capitalism needs to be tempered with some regulation of its own to avoid crony capitalism and to make sure that everybody has the opportunity to succeed. So, even though socialism is a dirty word, there needs to be some element of socialism in the communist system, in the capitalist system that we have. And certain items, certain things need to be really completely socialized. Parks, for example. Yes, you have some businesses building building parks for people to use, but usually that's done with some sort of government incentive. So there is a need for regulation. There's a need for socialism in certain aspects of our life. Sometimes socialism is definitely the way to go. And some benefits need to be managed by the government through taxes, and in my opinion, infrastructure is one of those things. And if you read the intro to today's show, I said there is news coming up for cat lovers. Just want to put that out there. We do have that coming up halfway through the show. You do not want to miss this information. And we also have a weird story that's a fishy story that will wrap up the show. But infrastructure. Infrastructure is something, in my opinion, needs to be handled on a governmental level. It can't be dished out to private companies. So, even though I love that President Donald Trump, which still sounds so weird to say, I can't get over saying President Donald Trump. It just seems so odd. Doesn't it seem odd to you? President Donald Trump. It's very, very weird. I just imagined the guy on The Apprentice. You're fired! That's all I can think of. And it just seems really, really weird. And a lot of the president's policies that have come out are pretty frightening. But his idea of spending $1 trillion in infrastructure, to be quite honest, it gets me giddy. It gets me very excited. I like the idea of spending a lot of money on infrastructure. So, you would think I'd be happy. This is where I become a little concerned. Again, if you want to chime in, you could do so at riversedgepgh.com via the live chat or the live Facebook chat or at RiverTalkPGH. He wants to use a combination of public and private financing. And the private financing is what worries me. To explain why, let's go back in time. Come back with me. My grandfather grew up in a different time. He's in his 70s, and anybody of his generation remembers a different time. He grew up in a nice little house in North Irwin, Pennsylvania. North Irwin is a very, very small town. It's probably, I would like to say it's almost the size of this studio. It's a small town. It's a town that I grew up in. And it's a town that I really enjoyed. It's so small, and I always love it because people will talk to me about their town and about towns being small, and they'll be like, oh, it's like such and such a town. And I ask the person, well, does such and such a town have a gas station? Oh, yeah, of course it has a gas station. North Irwin does not. Does X small town have a church? Oh, yeah, of course every small town has a church. Every town has a church. North Irwin does not. Now, when my grandfather lived there, North Irwin had both of those things, and its own school, and many other things. But when I grew up there, things have changed, times have changed, and North Irwin does not. North Irwin was a very small, small town, and I was very happy and privileged to serve the town as a councilman. But my grandfather had family that lived out in Huntington, PA. And Huntington is about a little over 2-hour drive from Irwin in an automobile now in today's world with today's highways. It's out near State College. Well, my grandfather was able to make his way to Huntington, PA completely on public transit. And if you're familiar with Irwin and you know the region and you know the area, you know that Irwin had a train stop, a train station, and that's what Irwin was known for. Believe it or not, Irwin was known as a touristy spot at the time because Irwin was the last stop on the train for those traveling into Pittsburgh. So it was really a cool thing. And my grandfather wasn't able to take the train to Huntington, even though it's stopping in Irwin, because the train was going the other way usually when he was starting out his day. So he would take a streetcar from Irwin to Greensburg and take a larger train from Greensburg out to Huntington, PA. And the streetcar system was so cool. It was it kind of like the T in some ways that we have here in Pittsburgh, which is vastly underfunded and doesn't go anywhere near the many stops that it needs to. But the streetcar was similar to the T, and it went all over, and it traveled through Irwin and all of these small towns. I saw a really cool map earlier that showed all of the places in Westmoreland County where the streetcars went, and they were here in Pittsburgh as well. They were all over the area. Such a cool thing, and there are so many streetcars. It is such a fascinating thing to look at. I urge every one of you to take a trip down to Washington County and check out the Streetcar Museum. They have a museum of streetcars, and it's really pretty fantastic. I'll see if I can pull up the website here so you can take a look if you're watching. But the Streetcar Museum is really so cool. They have so many streetcars from all different decades, all different types of companies, and I really thoroughly enjoyed my experience when I went down there. I went down, you guessed it, with Randy, and that was right before we started the Culture Cruise, I believe. So we had talked about maybe going back down to the Trolley Museum. It's actually called the Trolley Museum, but it's the same difference, down in Washington County. There were so many. They were so, by today's standards of busing, they were so luxurious. And that's probably because the streetcars were financed with private money. They were owned by private companies. So this private financing that the president wants to use to help fund the infrastructure plans that he has for this country. And by the way, he is right. This country needs a massive infrastructure overhaul. Definitely. In more ways than one. When it comes to transportation, absolutely. I mean, it's unbelievable. You can't get around anywhere in today's day and age. And that brings me back to my point about the streetcars. But also, we need infrastructure in other areas, such as we've been going on, the lead in the pipes. The piping needs overhauled here in Pennsylvania. So, my point is we need a lot of infrastructure spending, and the point that was made in many articles is, will these private companies be willing to invest in piping and things like that, or will it be roadways and trains and things like that? And I'm a huge advocate of expanding rail, a huge advocate of expanding the T here in Pittsburgh. I love the concept of streetcars. And in Westmoreland County, where my grandfather took a streetcar to Greensburg and then the train to Huntington, you couldn't do that nowadays. And there is busing in Westmoreland County. They have the Westmoreland County Transit Authority, and that does some good. But if you want to make it to Pittsburgh using Westmoreland Transit, you basically need a car to get from your house to the park and ride. So it's great for commuters who have a car to save themselves some money, but my uncle struggles because he has a medical condition. He struggles to find decent work because he doesn't have the means to get to those jobs. Because the busing, if you want to work retail, you could make that work. If you want something else, it's hard to make that work. The bus is not really a viable option. It's not like today. I was in an accident recently and my car is a little out of commission, so I had to take a bus from work to this job here at the studio today, for my overnight job to this job. I walked a little on the north side, and I could have not walked. There's actually a bus stop in front of my place. But I was able to get a bus and make my way back to Millvale. I work on the north side. And the bus stops multiple times on the same street, whereas in Westmoreland County, you need to travel quite a distance, or you need to be able to have a car to get to where you need to go. It's just not a great system. The streetcars went out of business, some say because General Motors purchased them and shut them down. I don't know. I haven't substantiated that. There's different reports to suggest why the streetcars went out of business. Maybe they just weren't profitable enough, and the private companies shut the streetcars down. Either way, it's something that's missing, and it's something that's never been replaced. And maybe President Donald Trump could convince private companies to invest in some sort of a light rail system to provide more access to people in these communities that are outside of the major cities. But what happens when they become less profitable? What happens then? And that's really the question that I am hoping to hear from you on today. RiversEdgePGH.com, the live chat, the live Facebook chat, or on Twitter at RiverTalkPGH. Are you nervous about this infrastructure spending? Are you excited? Do you have mixed feelings? Obviously, the president has come down with some very controversial decisions, some decisions that I have come out against, such as the big travel ban. But this one I could see some promise, but it doesn't come without a little bit of anxiety as well. River Talk PGH on the Facebook live chat. Are you a cat lover? Do you own a cat? Ooh. Stay tuned. We have some exciting news for cat lovers. And speaking of private industry, by the way, getting involved in infrastructure, Elon Musk is really putting out some interesting things. I just saw this article where he's come up with a solar-powered roof that apparently is more affordable than an actual roof. and it would power your house. And I know you say in Pittsburgh, it's not going to work. It's too cloudy in Pittsburgh. We can't have solar power. Ugh. It just doesn't work. Well, that's not true. Stop by the Millville Library sometime and check that out. Believe it or not, the entire library is solar powered. The entire building. It's fantastic. So, check that out. It can be done. And you definitely want to check this out. But it can be done, and according to Elon Musk, it can actually be cheaper than just putting on a normal roof to the house. I think that's really cool. I think it's worth checking up on. Also, he's got that new travel system, and there are plans. It's called the Loop, and there are plans to basically connect Pittsburgh to Chicago in next to no time. It's phenomenal. So he's really doing some things to help the infrastructure, and I think something like that, maybe something a little more experimental, that might be a place where private funding could match public funding, and maybe a little innovation could come that way, because that is one thing that I will say that the private sector does a much better job of, and that's being innovative. But then again, the streetcars were innovative, and look what happened to those. I am Brian Crawford. You are listening to the River's Edge Radio Network. After the break, we have cats. News on cats. News for cat lovers and cat owners. And you have to check this out. This is so cool, and it's coming to Pittsburgh this summer. Stay tuned for more information. Up next, here on the River's Edge.
Zhuzh. Z-H-O-O-Z-H. It's like a palindrome, but it's not. It's Zhuzh. This is Liz Tripoli inviting you to Ham Bones, March 18th at 10 p.m. after Hogwash. For only a $5 donation, proceeds benefit Greater Pittsburgh Literacy Council. Please come see Zhuzh, a comic, a musician, and an improv troupe walk into a bar. Sponsored by River's Edge.
I don't play games, I'ma maim you. Homie, can't you see these clowns? I run the pet shop, now I'm running from the law. I ain't a house cat, I'll run this whole damn block. I keep a bag of catnip right beside my Glock. Don't pat me, you're ramming a cat straight a fish. Keep my milk in a saucer in my food.
I don't know if James will be here, but there's a church in Pittsburgh, or a former church, that may be the cat's meow for your house pet. Hear me out. There's a guy who bought a church. And, yeah, that's kind of like a normal thing in Pittsburgh, people buying churches. I mean, right here in Millville, one guy bought a couple churches. It's a thing, right? It's a Pittsburgh thing. We've got a lot of old churches. Pittsburgh was a pretty religious place, I suppose, for some time, and especially Catholic. And there's a guy in Tarentum who just bought a church for $55,000 on auction. And he's got some interesting plans for it. He wants to turn it into like an event space, which is kind of cool. And the school part of the church, he wants to turn into an office collaborative workspace. But one thing that he wants to do, and ooh, this is so cool, he wants to create a cat fort, a huge cat fort throughout the sanctuary of this church. And it's going to be insane. It says that his name is Mr. Rhodes, and Mr. Rhodes purchased this big church. His name's Philip Rhodes, 48, in Highland Park. And he bought this church. He's going to create a giant cat fort 40 feet in to the high ceilings of the sanctuary. So a 40 feet tall cat fort. Can you imagine? I imagine Ian Insect's cat circus. He was in a cat circus. I feel like this could be a place for the cat circus. Or maybe we can create our own Pittsburgh-based cat circus here at this church in Tarentum. If you're watching on the video, take a look. This is a picture of an artist image of a cat fort the cat's traveling through. And the thing is that cats never fall. They always, or if they do fall, they always land on their feet, right? So this cat fort could be a viable thing. I think it's fantastic. Speaking of infrastructure, what a great use of this old building. I warn the gentleman, Mr. Rhodes, though, be cautious. These pictures are courtesy of the Post-Gazette. If you're listening, you can find the article and read more about this at thepostgazette.com. Post-Gazette. Why do they do that? Put the hyphen in. That's kind of a weird thing, and it's something that I've learned that's kind of a bad idea. Is like we have the apostrophe in the River's Edge, and when you go to look for it on TuneIn Radio, you have to add that apostrophe, and it can be kind of cumbersome to people. So my suggestion is ditch the apostrophe, ditch the hyphen if you're going to create a business. Did you know Land's End, who has an apostrophe in their name, the apostrophe, it's actually misspelled. It's a clothing brand, Land's End, and it's LANDS apostrophe end, as if there are multiple lands, and it's the end. It was a spelling error, and they just kind of went with it. So, I guess whatever works, or a grammatical error, rather, or whatever. It was an error. So, I don't know. But, this cat tower looks so cool. And it's kind of like they have all of these cat cafes coming out, and this guy references this in the article. I'm not going to read the article. You got to go to the Post-Gazette to read that. But I don't know. I think it's so cool. I'm going to go out to see it. It's only going to be up for a short time this summer. And it's only going to be up from June through July. It's only for a few weeks here. And I am just really excited. It's going to be so cool. So, check this out, the Cat Tower. You don't want to miss this. I can't miss this. I want to see this Cat Tower so badly. So, somebody has leased the old Strip District food center, and it's a Chicago developer, and they're redeveloping the produce terminal in the Strip District. And I don't know. They're leasing it for 99 years, but they have the option to purchase after 15. And I guess this is a way for the city to be able to control a little bit of what goes into the old produce terminal. And there were talks about tearing it down, and it's really an eyesore as it stands. And people were very sentimental over this old terminal. And they want to see it revitalized. They want to see it become a food terminal again. And I don't know. Is it a viable thing? This guy in Chicago, I guess he seems to think so. Personally, and I know this is very unpopular, I didn't grow up in the city, okay? I grew up in Westmoreland County, but to be quite honest, the whole terminal, it's so long, it blocks off access to the river. It blocks off the view of the river. And I understand at one point the rivers weren't anything to look at. But come on, it's 2017. We've cleaned shit up here in Pittsburgh. Can't we just have a nice view of the river? Why is everyone afraid of looking at the river? I understand it's polluted. I understand your eyes may burn out of the sockets some days whenever some acid mine drainage comes funneling through the Allegheny, but I just want to look at the river. And I think tearing down that food terminal and building smaller buildings would be a nice thing to do. I think it would be better to look at the river. I think it would be more advantageous. I think it would, for the people in the Strip District, I think it would be better for the city. I think it would be better for my eye sockets to be able to see some greenery as I walk down Smallman Street, to be able to see the river. Why is there nowhere? There's nowhere in the city to view the river. No, I mean, it's very few. Redfin Blues on Washington's Landing. Yeah, you can see the river there. What a beautiful view they have. Have you gone out to see that? Woo! That's nice. You've got the bridge to your left, the city to your right. But there's so few places. in the city to have a good view. Yeah, Mount Washington up there, you've got all of those places. You've got a few places on the north side, but again, they put all these trees up in front of the restaurants, and there's some good places there that I like out on the north side, on the north shore. But they put all these trees up in front. Why would you put trees? I like trees. Trees are good. But why would you put trees up in front of a restaurant that views the river? If I'm going to a river viewing restaurant, I want to actually view the river. Am I crazy? Am I nuts? Am I nuts for thinking that the Capitol Grill should have a better view than McDonald's? Because if you go down to the McDonald's near Market Square, they have a beautiful view. They do. Go upstairs. I'm telling you, the second floor of that McDonald's, fantastic view. And it's nothing against the McDonald's, and it's not that I want them to have a shitty view. In fact, I like the fact that they have a good view, but why does the Capitol Grill look at like some alley? Why do all of these expensive, high-end restaurants view some gutter, some back alley, some, I don't know, some rubbish? Just, I think, you know, we have so many beautiful views. Why is nobody opening up restaurants on the river? And I know from the Bettis Grill you can see the river some if you sit outside on a certain part of the patio. But again, it's right there, and they put all of these trees up front. The Rivers Casino, the way they have their restaurants positioned, it's sometimes, like from the wheelhouse, very hard to see the city. You can see the river at least, so that's a good thing. But why can't you see the city? I think you should be able to go out to a multiple variety of restaurants and be able to either look at the city or look at the river. I really like the Grand View because you can you're hanging off of a cliff and you can overlook the entire city and see the river if you want to, all from the Grand View. But I'm getting ahead of myself. I'm kind of going off on a tangent, but there's just so much opportunity, and I understand Pittsburgh was a city where for much of its existence you didn't want to look at the river. But nowadays you do, and I feel like with all of this development, why is nobody building along the river? Please answer that to me, for me. On the live chat, answer it via Twitter at RiverTalkPGH. Why is nobody building along the river? Not really. Like I said, if they do, they put up a bunch of trees. But the guy, he's planning on potentially buying this property or this developer in 15 years. And I guess this is another good thing. I will say this. The Society for Contemporary Craft will be able to stay at its current place in the terminal. That's part of the agreement. And that's great. My buddy Dan Kuhn, who shares this building with us here in the Millville studios, he runs Ton Pottery. He has artwork on display there. It's a great asset to the town. So, I don't know. I hope it's successful. You never want to see anything fail. I just wish I could have been able to see a view of the river. That's all. So we've got that. We've got cat towers. Tesla's solar-powered roof. Lots of interesting things going on in the world. We're going to take a quick break. And when we come back from the break, we have a fishy, weird news story for you. And that's coming up after the break here on Pittsburgh's Voice for Local Music, the River's Edge Radio Network.
Come on, go! It's green! Come on! Go!
God damn it, Brian. You need to calm down with the road rage.
I'm sick of these people, these assholes.
The road rage, man. You gotta calm down on the road rage.
Well, I want to get to where we're going. We have a lot of great stuff coming up. We're going to Falling Water,
Bicycle Heaven,
the Mattress Factory,
Tuck Knob,
Trundle Manor. All right, which way do I go? Which way do I go? Come on,
right,
come on.
Right.
Too late now.
Right, come on.
Too late now. You know, I gotta keep going. I'm not gonna sit here like some asshole.
Oh, come on, man.
All right, you're listening to The Culture Cruise. You can find us at riversedgepgh.com.
Your local Pittsburgh area museum podcast.
Yes, riversedgepgh.com, and come take a ride with us.
So I was going to cut out of this song early, but let's just listen to the end. from the Bleal Brothers. Really great stuff. I first saw them at an event for Diego, and it was down at the Pittsburgh Winery, which is an awesome place, and it was a ton of fun. And then I actually met Clint Bleal at the Collegiate Tuesdays out at James Street. What fantastic musicians. Awesome. Welcome back to the River's Edge Radio Network. I am Brian Crawford. Do not forget, we've got Zhuzh. It's coming up. You do not want to miss out on this awesome event. A comic, a musician, and an improv troupe walk into a bar and zhuzh. It's the 18th, March 18th, 10 p.m. at Hambones on Butler Street. That's 4207 Butler Street. Do not miss it. Got our weird news right after this song. Just listen to the end. Good stuff by the Bleal Brothers. All right, so some fishy business here on the River's Edge. People find weird things at the grocery store, out in the parking lot. You actually often find shopping carts from multiple different stores scattered about. And one thing that I found on more than one occasion, which is kind of disturbing, is diapers, dirty diapers, laying on the pavement outside of shopping places. And I just wonder, why? Ew, ugh, ugh. Why would you leave a dirty diaper out in a parking lot? What kind of monster, what kind of animal would do something like that? Well, one person wanted to outdo the people with the diapers, the poop leavers. Somebody decided to leave a 5-foot-long, according to the Associated Press, a 5-foot-long dead shark in a shopping cart outside of a store. This happened out in St. Augustine, Florida, and that's just weird. Very weird. I don't know. I don't know what you would do if you saw something like that. What would I do? I don't know. That's kind of an abnormality. Speaking of Florida, Jimmy Buffett, who I'm a huge parrot head if you did not know. In fact, that's the first concert I saw at Star Lake Amphitheater out in Burgettstown. And it was the only show that I went to see the same guy twice there. And we always had a system where my cousin and I would go together, and my sister, and they each would bring somebody. And we would travel up together, and our dads were twins. And not that that really matters, but for some reason it seems germane to the story. But the dads would drive up separately, and one would take one vehicle home and one would take the other. Because if you've ever been to a Jimmy Buffett concert, I don't care if you're straight-edged, you're going to get messed up. But it's going to be a good time. It's like that. We talked about communism. See, I'm bringing the entire show back around, full circle. Jimmy Buffett and the parrot head movement at the Jimmy Buffett concerts, the tailgating, that, ladies and gentlemen, is communism at its finest. You can go there without any food, without any alcohol, and leave bloated and drunk. I've done it. Trust me, I know. We went there the one day, and this lady, who was probably my mom's age at the time, forced us to come get food. She had this entire buffet. She's like, "You kids are not drinking on an empty stomach." And she dragged us over and forced us to take back huge plates of delicious homemade food. It was delectable. It was delicious. Communism tastes good, let me tell you. And I remember sitting at a bar, a fully furnished bar out in the parking lot of with frozen margaritas. This guy built a bar and he just gave them away for free at no expense. And I remember sitting there for hours drinking frozen margaritas for free. It was an unbelievable experience. And I'll save some more stories from the Buffett concerts for you in the future. But Jimmy Buffett is, because I'm sure I'll be talking about them again, but Jimmy Buffett is opening up a retirement home. It's a Margaritaville senior living community. And I think this would be fantastic. What an awesome idea. This is where I want to spend, if I ever have to go to a home, this is the home that I would like to live in. Apparently it has 2 and 3 bedroom homes, garages, it's golf cart friendly, but if I ever decide to live in some sort of senior community, please, please, please send me to the Jimmy Buffett Senior Community. That's it for today's episode. It is 11 a.m. I will be back Wednesday. Michael Cohen will be back with us here. Don't forget to tune in to the River's Edge at riversedgepgh.com for local music the rest of today. Do not despair in your Monday. And everybody hates Mondays. Monday is my day off, so I will rejoice in Monday. But do not let work get you down. Brighten your day with some local music. It's up next, and it's only at riversedgepgh.com. See you Wednesday.